Asymmetry is the lack of symmetry. 1 up, 2 down. 1 down, 2 up. Even better. 1 down, infinite up. Where in our lives can we find that which provides us with greater upside and simultaneously holds lower risk levels? An imbalance of the most attractive type. In investing, the options trade holds these characteristics. Purchasing an option for a price that's +1 or -1 standard deviation from the current price will cost X amount of dollars, therefore holding X amount of risk for the contract. Let's say X is $2,000. One can only lose the $2,000 maximum if the option contract expires. Valueless. You can lose no more. But on the upside, if the price of the stock moves more than 1 standard deviation in either direction for which you have purchased before the date of the option's expiration, then the option becomes infinitely more valuable. The further the price moves past that standard deviation, the more valuable the ability to purchase or the option to purchase the unit of whatever you've contracted for becomes. It gives you the ability to buy something at a price that was determined in a previous set of time frame, a previous set of details used to create a valuation for that price. This is asymmetry at play in the investing world. Where else can we find asymmetric risk in our lives? A scientist on the search for the cure for cancer is an example I can think of. On the risk side is his time and his efforts on any given day. Small downside risk in return for, on the upside, a nearly infinite or wildly impactful upside return for his time. Something small like helping an elderly lady unload her groceries when you see her struggling, might take 5 minutes of your day away from doing something else, but the upside is much greater than the downside. Another place investors find asymmetric risk or perceived asymmetric risk is in investing in startup companies or small brands. This is, say, investing a few $1,000s or, on a larger scale, $100,000 in a startup, X becomes the amount you invested is the maximum amount that you can lose on that investment, where the upside becomes infinite. If that $100,000 was placed on Uber or Amazon or companies like that, that upside can become thousands of X. Something like investing your time in writing a book or a piece of media, or say creating a recording like this, the one I'm doing now. It costs you the time in which you put in, and if you can minimize the downside strategically, like by, say, recording on the devices you have with the software you have, as opposed to going out and spending $3,000 on a microphone or some fancy devices or a team of people to record with you in your early phases, you're minimizing your downside. I don't really have a downside here, If I create music on the fly with a guitar that I already own and a microphone that I already had and a recording program I just happen to have already, I don't have much downside invested, and the upside on this could be huge. Someone can hear this and it can affect their life dramatically in an existential way, In a more literal way, this piece of content could, now or say in 20 years randomly could be referenced and become a very popular piece of, content, which now you've created a massive leverage point for yourself through media. This recording can just live on forever. That is an example of asymmetric risk, small downside for large upside. These endeavors involve massive upside with limited downside, as I've said. One can fail and be nearly in the same place as where they were before they made the attempt, whereas if they succeed, they will be dramatically affected positively. These are the places where we want to place our bets. Now, we must be conscious of probability in this approach. Learning where a mean lives and where variance of certain activities fluctuates between will give us an idea of how dramatic a moonshot we are placing our bets on. Certainly, a doctor working to cure cancer would be more probably successful in our current world than one seeking to create a device for time travel. And similarly, an option traded on the S&P 5000 or the S&P 500 for plus or minus 2 standard deviations from the current price of $4,600 or wherever we're at this moment is more likely successful on any given day than winning the Powerball with one ticket purchased. Now, the former of the two is still a moonshot of sorts, but the latter is an even further moonshot. So understanding probability and its relative nature to what you are placing your bets on is very important. If one is to seek asymmetric wagers, one must also seek research and information on the relative realistic probability of success in each endeavor. And this is where information and research comes into play. An example I can think of is someone I've read on this subject a lot is a philosopher named Nassim Taleb. And his writings, somewhere along the way in writings and interviews, he spoke about, in one of his books, I believe Antifragile, he wrote about in 2007, prior to the great financial collapse, he wrote about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and how he had observed a powder keg that they were sitting on. So his research, his knowledge in a certain field, it can be inherent knowledge, which is always important to rely on, is your inherent skills and your inherent knowledge, that which you do not have to work much harder for than where you're at currently. But research, nevertheless, in a certain field or certain area will make you more skilled at placing these asymmetric bets. He saw that powder keg and his fund at the time placed long out of the money options puts on I believe the S&P 500, essentially betting on the chance that would affect the market so dramatically through connectivity that you would lose immense amounts of value in the market. And then having that option to purchase at a price well below the current price, but then immediately flipping to becoming well above the current price would save certain people a lot of losses. So those became extremely valuable, and they were able to create a lot of value for themselves out of virtually nothing. So massive asymmetric bet and a massive asymmetric win for them on that one. So witnessing these types of things in our lives and trying to figure out where our energy, our bets, our currency, our whatever it is that we are trying to apply leverage to the universe around us to create return, witnessing where those are most asymmetric, I think, is hyper valuable and is where I will be focused in the near future. And if you're very interested in these concepts, I suggest a few books, 2 by Nassim Taleb that I've read. I'm sure the rest are great too, but Antifragile and Fooled by Randomness. And Naval Ravikant is also another great sort of philosopher of sorts around concepts of asymmetry. There's a gentleman named Graham Weaver, professor at Stanford, that I listened to a few talks about asymmetry that were really good. And just kind of research that subject and see what you think. I find it very interesting in terms of strategy.